Hey, I'm Anna.
And I'm Shannon, and you're listening to The Assignment.
We've been friends for over a decade and have always enjoyed entertaining each other with our own rather personal stories.
Some hilarious, some embarrassing, some mundane, and some heartbreaking, but always as honest as possible.
I think we afford each other a soft place to land without judgment and a whole lot of levity.
Please be reminded that this podcast deals with mature topics and is intended for an adult audience. Additionally, we sometimes discuss graphic and disturbing content, which may prove disturbing for some listeners, in addition to your hosts.
This is true. Welcome to our episode on modern wellness and self-care, where we talk about all the ways we take care of our little human bodies, minds, and souls. We explore how we define self-care, both historically and presently, and how our experiences and relationships to the idea of self-care have shaped how we care for ourselves. Let's get started, Shannon.
All right.
So our first question on the topic today is self-care a privilege or a right?
Yeah, that term privilege, right? It's loaded. I think it's interesting we were talking about before the episode how we talk about privilege a lot more when we're recording a podcast than we do in our conversations that are private.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think it's because you don't know who's listening to the podcast. And so you're kind of afraid of being judged, a little bit.
Yeah, we don't know what lens they're looking through and what unconscious biases we've accidentally just put up for review.
Correct.
Right.
And I mean, part of the writing and development for this podcast was done in a majestic vacation home overlooking the rolling hills of the Semena province of Dominican Republic. This made possible by modern society's answer to self-care, the vacation. Since around the mid-20th century, workers have had the right to leave the stresses of their jobs behind for a brief period of time to go and explore some part of the world. Vacations are a right written into modern labor code in Canada, but where you go on vacation is all about privilege, Anna. So this year, we went to Dominican Republic for 3 weeks.
Slightly excessive.
It was an unusually long vacation by modern standards, especially to be taken all at once. But, the older I get, the more and more I insist on more time away to change the scenery of my life. Vacations are one of those things that unless you claim them and make the effort to actually take them, they drift away, leaving your entire life taken up by the daily grind. Life is short. And the time that you spend working, conversely, is very, very long. So the importance of stepping away from the stress of your job and responsibilities acts for some as a means of refueling the tanks of energy, innovation, renewed incentive. I have to say, if the carrot that a company dangled for reaching goals was longer and longer vacations, I would happily trot along like a contented little workhorse. My time is more valuable to me than money. So I would trade to have more time away and less money than the reverse. My boss isn't listening to this.
No.
Most concepts of self-care suggest that it can be defined by the practice of taking actions to maintain or improve one's own health and well-being. It's about recognizing your needs and taking steps to meet them, whether they're physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. As defined by the National Community Action Agencies Association, which is an article that I read, the core concept of self-care is about doing things that support your physical, mental, emotional, and financial health. So it's interesting that this definition, they've dropped spirituality and they've added financial. Because even spirituality might be something reserved for those with privilege. The fact that the stress that people suffer when living in poverty creates mental health challenges and some studies have suggested impairs cognitive function, leading to poor decision-making that can condemn them to stay in the position of poverty that they are in. And it makes you question whether the concept of self-care is an adaptive advantage of people with the socioeconomic means to improve and enrich themselves, not only financially, but also in a multitude of other ways. As opportunities to practice self-care is a matter of agency. It increases with the amount of freedom you enjoy over your own life. So, almost all the traditional ways that people practice self-care take one or two essential ingredients, often both: money and time. These resources often shrink in direct proportion to your socioeconomic standing and therefore are big influences in how much or how little self-care you practice. One article that I read gave a list of things that broke people could do to practice self-care. A lot has to do with mindfulness, naps, baths, free community exercise classes, live music in the park, breathing exercises, making a gratitude list, and saying no to things, my favorite. Sometimes when it feels like you have no agency, saying no to something is the little win that you need in your life. I think looking at self-care through this lens has something to teach us. The quality of self-care is not necessarily directly proportional to the amount of money or time you spend on your self-care activities. In fact, many of the activities listed for broke people are probably just as effective. We have a tendency to try and rate things by the amount of money it costs, but taking time to practice gratitude and just breathe or enjoy some free live music might be just as effective. Again, though, agency to do any and all is a freedom that only a lucky few enjoy.
Yeah. I think by that token, self-care is both a privilege and a right.
Mm-hmm.
And also at least partly dependent on how you define it.
Right.
I mean, if we look at the idea of wellness and self-care in an historical context, we begin with our needs for only the most basic physical survival. And we move through these sort of iterations of balanced lifestyles and illness prevention and traditional medicines and mental well-being and eventually civil rights movements and modern day buzzwords and social justice where we are today. And I think perspective really counts for a lot when we talk about modern wellness and self-care. Because I guess for me, the privilege piece of our modern definition is that it assumes that all of those crucial basic needs have already been met. And self-care are just the extras. It's that work that you're meant to undertake to be your most balanced, blissful self.
The word work is interesting there.
Isn't it? It's funny. I read, I guess it's not funny, but I read a blog post the other day that stated wellness is the new wealth, a lifestyle statement and a status symbol. And I thought, maybe that's part of what makes me feel so uncomfortable about how we define self-care and wellness. I mean, we've talked about it. It does. It feels a little unclean in your mouth. I don't know. There's just something off-putting about that terminology. And, partly maybe it's that I just don't feel cool enough to fit in. but partly there's a whole lot of bullshit. There really is. I mean, wellness is no longer that really, you remember that pretty colorful Canadian food guide poster that was on our fridges in the 80s telling you exactly how much dairy you should have a day? Like that was
I do remember
the self-care of the 80s, along with, Hal and Sue Johansson and their epic tracksuits on Body Break.
Rollerblading in matching K-way suits.
I know. I loved it.
Yeah.
But it's not that anymore. No. And it's not even, a laid back hippie surf culture with a penchant for protein bowls, halter tops, and yoga, which I was just getting used to.
Oh no, that's done.
That's done. So now we've got exclusive Medi spas and I don't know, you could have an eyebrow thread lift. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Is it buccal fat? What is it?
Yeah.
What is that?
Buccal. I think it's like you take the fat out of like under your eyes and put it somewhere else.
I feel like that's not going to be very helpful down the road.
Or maybe you take it out of your cheeks. You take it out of somewhere.
You take it out, you fill it, then you filter it.
Right.
And, not to mention the thousands of apps that I can count that are going to save my sanity or make me look 10 years younger. And I don't know about you, but I was too young during the height of the sort of 80s, 90s, like breast implant craze to be influenced. And until recently, I would actually have never given any thought to plastic surgery. And we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
And what did you say?
I said, God strike me dead if every woman that has reached her mid-40s doesn't know exactly what plastic surgery she would have. I know.
I have a short list and I don't really intend to do it, but there you go.
I mean, I have a whole plan of who's looking after me, where I'm going, the recovery period. You have to like kind of disappear for a while, especially if you do like a neck/facelift, because you can come out of those right away looking like you got caught in a wind tunnel. It settles.
I mean, I get it though. Now I look at it differently, and I'm right in the middle of that target wellness demographic, as are you. You know, maybe I'm struggling with how I look as I get older, but maybe it's a lot more than that now. Emotionally, physically, mentally, I'm experiencing changes I have no business knowing how to navigate.
Right.
And maybe I've got some deep-seated self-esteem issues, or maybe I've been far too introspective, and this list of things I need to fix is now just insurmountable.
I feel like it happens fast, though, too. You have this really long runway of youth into early kind of middle age. And then all of a sudden, like, whammo.
Exponential change.
You're in middle age. Like, you're just there.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like I have to think about things like retirement. I have to think about like what? Like it all of a sudden, it just hits you like a ton of bricks for some reason.
It was 44 for me.
That's the age I currently am.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
No problem.
I did not sign up for this club.
No, but here you are. And with that little bit of extra disposable income, you can just throw that at fixing yourself.
Disposable income?
Yeah. That's what we're supposed to have in our mid-40s. Didn't you know?
No.
Oh, that's because we vacationed for 3 weeks.
Yeah, that 3-week vacation kind of took the disposable income out of the picture.
Yeah.
It was worth it.
I know. It absolutely was. And, you know, like you mentioned, you can certainly reject that materialistic idea of wellness and self-care that says it's a privilege instead of a right. I get that. And we can do our best to research what we spend our money on and what we put in our bodies. We can attempt a more holistic, back to basics approach and, I don't know, eat organic ferments and things like that.
I mean, kombucha.
Which I do enjoy.
Yeah.
We can age gracefully and naturally. Will that make us healthier and happier? Sure. But maybe because it was our choice to live that way. And I think that's when we talk about privilege, it's still a choice. So if I'm choosing that my self-care is to have a nap or go for a walk in the sun, that's great. But that's not my choice, and I can't afford or I don't have the agency to do anything else.
If that's your only option.
Well, that's it.
Is it a choice? No. Yeah.
I mean, how do you build resilience to stress and take care of your own well-being when even your basic needs aren't being met? So when stress levels and struggles seem disproportionate to your ability to manage them, whether that's financial or emotional or intellectual, even the most basic forms of health and wellness are just a dream. And I don't know. So I keep thinking to myself, what does self-care look like when you're struggling, like really struggling? And how insulting should it be to somebody living in that reality to insinuate that self-care in the modern world, yes, it is a necessity, but you can't even manage the most rudimentary self-care. It's out of your grasp. And that it's your perspective that needs to change.
Right.
I mean,
yeah,
it's probably not making me feel any more well.
No. It's just like watching those chicks on TikTok who are living in a $5 million mansion that spend 3 hours every morning riding their Peloton bike and going to their home gym and then jumping in their sauna and then their cold plunge tub and then in their like garden. And I'm like, what?
The professional girlfriends, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. God love them. I mean... But
I don't know. I don't even think I remotely answered that question. What was the question? We've determined that I'm...
Is it a privilege or is it a right?
I don't know. But either way, we've determined I'm just an angry middle-aged woman shaking my fist at the clouds.
Angry woman yells at cloud.
Oh. All right. Next question, shall we?
Why not?
Okay. Shannon, what does self-care do for you? What is its utility in your life?
Well... Like we've talked about our discomfort at the word self-care. There's something monumental and at the same time cringeworthy about the term self-care. It's loaded, especially for the people whose use it's intended, us women. Mm-hmm. So let's start with self. There are many words that instantly spring to mind when I think of the word self. Self-esteem, self-confidence, self-awareness, selfishness. That's a big one that comes up when we talk about self-care. Mm-hmm. Self-congratulatory, self-aggrandizing, self-hatred, self-love, just to name a few. We move through our lives with one and only constant, and that is ourselves. So this quote-unquote relationship that you have with yourself, it evolves over time. And so keep a hold of that word relationship because it's important. Part of the evolution necessarily comes from developing some idea of who we are as a self to begin with. If we're going to do self-care for ourselves, we should know how to care for ourselves. And that starts by knowing who we are. Or else somebody's going to dictate it for you. Mm-hmm. So getting to know myself was one of those concepts that, when I was coming up, it was a little bit blurry. I started the journey the way most girls, I think, do, with comparing myself to others as a way of distinguishing myself either in reaction to how I was either similar or different, especially in my case, in the looks department. Women are conditioned to see their value in relation to how they look from a very young age, and particularly in my generation. I don't know if that's shifted because I'm not a mother to a daughter, but Disney princesses, Barbie, or if you were in Anna and I's generation, Gem.
Gem.
Movies, TV shows, even books. We're told that you are special if you are pretty. And so once you're on the comparison train, then you see yourself in relation to that measured standard. So for me, this was compounded by being raised by a stunningly beautiful mother. My mother's a fox. I grew up in awe of her beauty. I noticed things about it early on. She didn't look like my friends' moms. She had platinum blonde hair, those 80s white-rimmed sunglasses, hot pink lipstick, 80s leather pantsuits.
So badass.
I know, but they were still like demure, right? Like they were 80s leather pantsuits, but they were like beige pantsuits in leather or hunter green.
And I feel like they were probably perfectly tailored.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. She was something to behold. And I noticed the way that people were different around her, especially men. She was special. And I guess I hoped that being her daughter would automatically bestow the same blessings on my look and that I would grow into a similarly beautiful flower. And so I sort of spent my childhood kind of waiting for that.
Waiting to blossom.
Waiting for the ugly duckling turns into the swan, motif. And I don't even remember a time before wishing that I was pretty and blonde and had good teeth. I had a very large gap in my 2 front teeth. I could have flossed with my forearm.
Wasn't that fashionable for a time?
I mean, if you were a French model in the 60s, yes. In grade 1 in Toronto, Ontario, not so much.
Oh.
I remember it was school picture day, and I was on the playground at recess, and across the jungle gym, I saw Suzanne Love. And Suzanne Love was blonde, she had tanned skin, and she, that day, was wearing a perfect pink and white check dress. And I remember this feeling of hopelessness looking at her, feeling like a goblin by comparison. And I don't know what possessed me to do this, but in my defense, children are basically immoral sociopaths until taught otherwise. But I walked across the playground and I pushed her into a mud puddle.
Oh, gosh.
And she had to go home. No picture for Suzanne that day.
Oh, Shannon.
As horrible as it sounds, and I know, it does sound horrible, that was probably my very first act of self-care. Because it gives you permission. That's what it does. Just hearing the term, I suddenly feel that I have a right to my own time, my own space to care for my own needs. I feel a sudden lift, of what feels like an unending sense of obligation towards others. My most constant form of self-care is probably my early morning wake up. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning and I write in a journal. And there is a reason that I choose 5 a.m. I bet you can guess what it is. I can be completely and utterly alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I used to stay up very late for that same reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I used to say I couldn't get up at 5 a.m., but I could stay up until 5 a.m.
Wherever you can find it, I feel like you need to find that time, especially if you share your house with a partner or children or what have you, that you can be uninterrupted. I get up and it's all about my routine. I need to amass all of the proper ingredients for this: coffee, kombucha, my journal, my daily supplements, my phone. I throw a blanket over our 2 island stools to create like a mini couch.
I know your island, so I'm just trying to picture this little camp you've got going.
Yeah, I build my it's like kind of like building my own little nest, my morning nest. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm feeling until I open that journal up and my pen starts to dance. The utility for this activity is that I just have some time to be with myself for a while before I need to be or do anything for anyone else. And if I don't do this, I feel it. Something is missing. I'm not able to take on my day with the same energy. And so in a way, this form of self-care is like medicine. Mm-hmm. To me, it's a non-negotiable. And it's probably the only form of self-care that I practice on a daily basis.
Yeah, you're pretty diligent about that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember you slept in once on vacation, I think until 7. And I was like, is she okay?
She all right in there?
Why isn't my coffee made?
Where's my pot of coffee?
Shannon.
But see, that's what makes the term loaded. Self-care is about taking care of self. It's not about taking care of others. It's certainly not about taking care of Suzanne Love.
Oh, poor Suzanne Love.
Sorry,
what
Suzanne
a great
Love.
name, though.
I know, right? We have to choose ourselves. And this is a lot harder for most women than it sounds. It's an act of rebellion, really. The choice is sometimes at the sacrifice of other people. It often has to be. When I take time to care for me, I am carving that out of the rest of the existing time that I have that I am wholly dedicating to caring for others or to do for others. So spouses, obviously I don't have children, but if I look at other people's experiences, spouses, children, aging parents, in-laws, jobs.
No autonomy over time.
None.
0.
Yeah. And so the fact that the term exists at all is kind of the whole point. It needs to stand as the created reason to take care of ourselves, or else we simply won't. And so that's my qualifier. Activities that I consider to be self-care are entirely for me, no one else but me. They may benefit other people by default, like putting your own oxygen mask on first. Because if you can't fucking breathe, how are you going to be able to help anyone? But in the end, the goal isn't about helping anyone. It's to fucking breathe.
Right.
Yeah. So my current self-care activities, obviously we've talked about the getting up early, writing in a journal. I've practiced yoga for the last 15 years. That's a big one for me. I take long walks with my dog, Lexi, while listening to music. I doom scroll TikTok. I binge watch TV. I ignore phone calls I don't feel like taking. I drag around a magic bag like a child's blanket and apply heat to my lower back or belly on a near constant basis.
I can attest to this. You do this.
I am currently sitting on that magic bag right friggin' now. I don't know why. The warmth makes me feel productive and safe. I do this at home. I do this while recording podcasts. I do this at work, which they must think I'm insane, but I don't care. Not all my self-care activities are healthy. Most of them are done alone, but not all. Some are markedly unhealthy. I feel like doom scrolling TikTok is probably not good for your mental health. But as a recovering alcoholic and recovering drug addict and ex-smoker, I will tell you that as a result of, if the result of your activities is an imminent and guaranteed death, I put them in the healthy column.
As well you should.
My bar is low, okay? And the best part of self-care, in my humble opinion, is that the person that gets to determine the what of self-care is always you. And we're going to talk about our perfect day at the end of this podcast because it might look similar. It might look very different. One person's self-care is somebody else's total torture.
Yes. Remember once we were traveling together and you wanted to go to a yoga class and you were like, would you like to join me? And I said, no.
Yeah.
There is nothing about that makes me feel warm and fuzzy at all. Like, no.
Absolutely not.
And I love that it does for you.
I respect that. So I think it needs to come from you. It needs to be something that you have organically come to the place that you enjoy. And if you're not the sole author of the activity, it's not self-care. That's it. So, okay. So let's talk about the downside. We've already kind of talked about the dark side of self-care. It's the big underlying question. Are you really serving yourself, or are you a slave to a concept of what that self should be based on unrealistic standards placed on us by our culture? So staring down the barrel of 40, I had this sinking feeling that I was going to need to dig into some more well-rounded self-care that did not hinge so much on looking and feeling a certain way about how I looked. And I think this is a journey that women in our culture need to begin at this age. We don't want to lose the power that we have enjoyed as women who are attractive, but we need to shift that power from how we look to who we are as people. It sounds obvious, but in practice, I think it's less obvious. Like, are we doing it exclusively in the service of the male gaze, right? Are we doing it so we can become acceptable by society and have our attractiveness be the main qualifier to our general visibility? You wonder to yourself, am I doing this for them, or am I doing this, if I'm doing this for somebody else, how come it feels so good? Acceptance, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's addictive. So as I moved into my mid-40s and experienced changes in my aging looks and the shrinking of that kind of visibility, or what some people disgustingly, I might say, refer to as fuckability, the thought occurs to me more than I care to admit. So much of this type of self-care is now practiced in the service of what we call anti-aging. So retinol treatments, hyaluronic moisturizer, collagen plumpers, all trying to stave off the dreaded fall of gravity that denotes the fall of youthfulness. Are we trying to deny time? If we look 35 and feel 35, can we just convince ourselves that we are 35? I have often heard people say that age is a state of mind, and I think this is true. I don't feel my age at all. I cannot believe that I am the age that I am some days when I still have the attitude and the absurd thoughts of my teenage self. I have a little bit more wisdom. I do not experience the painful insecurity and fears that I did in my youth. I'm mostly free of that, which is, I think, why people in their 40s and 50s, they want their cake and eat it and eat it too.
Yeah.
They feel great. They've worked through a lot of the bullshit that you went through in your 20s and 30s to get to this point. And now we have the freedom to really enjoy life. We just want to look 25 while doing it.
What a terrible trade-off.
I know.
Oh, I have to say, Shannon, I am chuckling a little bit thinking of how my own driver's license expired in 2020. And we were able to simply renew the license without a photograph change during COVID. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So according to my license photo, I am in fact still 35.
I mean, shit.
And this year it's up.
Time's up, bitch.
Oh, I know. So the question was about self-care. What does it do for us? The utility in our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always interesting when you and I sort of walk away from this process. We write these answers to these questions, and then when we're done, we look at each other's responses, and sometimes they're nearly identical, and sometimes they are at either end of the spectrum. So this specific one was really close, and it is something that is only for me. It feels good to me, no matter how silly it may be. Doesn't matter. In fact, one of my favorite things to do is to crank classical music and dance around my bedroom like an awkward primate. Do Do you remember the movie Can't Buy Me Love?
Yeah.
Where Patrick Dempsey's character pays the hot neighbor girl to be his boyfriend and make him popular?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's a scene in that movie where he learns to dance by unknowingly recreating the African anteater dance ritual. Well, this is what I want you to picture when you think of me flailing around my bedroom, listening to classical music in all my glory. That is self-care.
I hope to catch a glimpse of this one day.
Maybe next vacation. So yeah, it gives me something I don't have to share. It's about me, only me, and it does not have to interest or cater to anybody else at all. And ideally, it shouldn't. And I guess ideally, it should also be something that's not going to damage my body, mind, or soul. And I think we probably all know deep down, whether we care to admit it or not, if something is truly benefiting our well-being. I have a really bad habit of taking time to devote to myself, in the aim of self-care. A walk or a meditation or a quiet moment certainly must be in my best interest. But in fact, all I was doing was, procrastinating about something that I really needed to do.
Done that.
Oh, yeah. But conversely, something like treating myself to smoking a cigar on vacation, sure. Maybe not an acceptable or healthy action of self-care. It is for me. Like you, I've got very few vices left.
Mm-hmm.
And to allow myself this sort of hint of debauchery of my youth feels a little empowering. And to have a little fun with a simple act like that and relinquish some of my need to control and manage everything, it's honestly a bit of a relief. And it kind of reinforces that I have more agency over my own decisions than I think I do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for a long time, I also locked myself into this pattern of thinking, especially early in my sobriety, that my personality was such that everything had to be all or nothing. But that's not really true. Not everything needs to be so black and white.
No.
So I'm something else to work on, I guess.
Yeah, you learn to give yourself a break as you get older, I think.
Yeah. I think so. Now, the other thing for me that's only recently become a tool for me is meditation. And I use it all at once to manage and care for myself. I use an app called Calm that I'm sure people are familiar with.
Oh, yeah.
And a specific gentleman named Jeff Warren, whose guided meditations I've listened to for about 5 years. And were really a saving grace for me during some more challenging times. So I think through that and a lot of writing and ruminating, I'm learning to be much kinder to myself and to kind of embrace this idea of equanimity instead of always bucking against the way things are in the moment all the time, constantly. So in that sense, meditation has allowed me, this peace of mind or this quiet that I used to find via far less meaningful and definitely less healthy avenues.
I'm familiar with some of those.
And like me, I suspect excessively prone to escapism and procrastination.
Absolutely.
So I've been trying to kind of, value discipline over motivation. And that's becoming a little bit more important to me the older I get and become kind of aware of what a short ride this really is. I'm realizing maybe it's not as important as I always thought to enjoy the things that bring me balance and peace. Sometimes taking care of myself is an absolute chore, and it's not always the fun things. And I think I'm appreciating that more and more, that it's going to pay dividends in the end, especially if you're someone who doesn't always feel like you deserve the good things.
Right.
So I guess, however we spin it, and what you need personally, in that sense, most anything can be self-care.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an open forum for sure.
But I guess, the second part of the question, what is its utility in my life? What does it do for me? It comforts me and it makes me feel, I think above all else, kind of worth the effort.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It reinforces that idea that I can be kind and empathetic to myself in the same way that I can be to others. And I think the takeaway is that I can appreciate that I am deserving of those things and that care. Even if I'm feeling down or critical of myself, it's reassuring that I can still give myself permission to take care of myself. And I guess subjectively, those less frivolous activities on my own self-care spectrum, they help me understand better who I am and what I need, to be better for those other people in my life as well. So through introspection and writing and meditating, I guess I try to find insight into why I think or believe and behave as I do. And I suspect taking care of myself in this way is more beneficial than not. I do sometimes worry that it's selfish.
Mm-hmm.
and self-aggrandizing to spend so much time thinking about myself. But, who I am and the person I present to the outside world, I think that's an aspect, like you, of self-care that's in flux for me right now.
Yep.
I'm more aware of aging than I ever have been. So I'm noticing a relatively new importance in feeling capable.
Capable?
Yeah, capable. Like I'm starting to grasp the fact that I won't always be able to trust my body and my mind to do the things that I ask of it.
Right.
And sometimes I already can't. And I think about wanting to be able to, keep up with my more active friends or my nieces and nephews. And I think about bone density and gut health.
I know.
And stupid hormones.
I know. Fucking hormones.
But there's always an element of vanity involved.
Yeah. Has to be.
Has to be. And, in the same sense, my relationship with who I see in the mirror and how I feel about that person is ever changing. But there are days that I struggle to feel okay with what I see.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to get angry at yourself for feeling that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you chastise yourself.
Absolutely.
But it's also like you're beating yourself up for not being able to undo decades of cultural conditioning.
I know.
That's baked into your DNA, essentially.
I know. We're not going to stop the march of time.
Nope.
But we can do the best with what we have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Neck lift.
Well, moving on from that, our next question. How do you view the relationship between self-care, femininity, and feminism?
I would say there are freedoms that women enjoy that men don't. Expressions of femininity, softness, playfulness, African anteater dance, dancing around in your bedroom in a flowy dress.
It's so fun.
Having long, emotionally vulnerable conversations with your girlfriends. That is something that we get to enjoy that I don't think men have the same access to those conversations. For me, doing a full moon ceremony with sage burning and candles lit and pulling tarot cards and charging my crystals and, those are the things that come to mind. Self-care kind of fits nicely into concepts of femininity because we're allowed to kind of expend time exploring ways to care for ourselves as a mode of expressing femininity. Thinking about femininity in this way holds kind of a sharp relief of how masculinity, by contrast, does not allow for the same sort of wonder and playfulness and vulnerability. My husband often refers to some of my admittedly made up practices of New Age spirituality as my nonsense. Which, okay, yes, but also who cares? Right?
You're not leading a cult. You're fine.
No, I'm fine. Exactly. What does it hurt to play, essentially? We have the freedom to be silly because we give ourselves that freedom. We need rest in a way that men either don't or don't allow themselves to believe that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Why does self-care feel like something that only applies to women? When you consider self-care from a feminist perspective, there is some reasoning as to why self-care is not only not self-indulgent, but actually a vital and necessary part of a woman's toolkit, especially when viewed with a feminist lens. And there's some quotes here of some articles that I read that said, the only value we have is that of the labor that we are able to produce. And self-care is often framed as a means of productive end. And yet, from a feminist perspective, we understand that the right of women to take, embrace, and indulge in pleasure, to be human, and to have others recognize our humanity is actually a very radical act.
Yeah.
Yeah. Demands placed on women in an unjust system mean that globally women carry out 76% of unpaid care work, 3 times that of men. Another quote was that self-care is about reclaiming time, space, and energy as a means of survival. It's about setting boundaries and saying no, placing value on things that improve your physical, mental, and emotional health, and setting time aside to do things. It's about putting yourself at the top of your priorities and placing power back into your own hands. Mm-hmm. And so many of these perspectives take umbrage with the form of self-care that we most often see as consumers in a capitalist society, those targeted at privileged, cisgendered, white, middle-class woman.
Are you looking at me?
Basically, Anna and I. Performative wellness activities that come with their own aesthetic, hidden messages of not being worthy, toxic perfectionism, and impossible to attain quality, spa treatments, luxury vacations, having your own cold plunge tub, and your sauna and your gym in your perfect home, in your perfect body, in your perfect friendships with limitless time and budgets. You know what I mean? You've seen this shit online. Capitalism is good at creating holes in people, holes in your life and your experience that can only be filled with money and products. And so self-care has sort of been taken hostage by some of this aesthetic. And it's something that you need to either quote unquote achieve or aspire to, as opposed to something that you have an absolute right to do. So feminism rejects this type of self-care and claims that it is, in fact, a radical act of self-preservation and political warfare. So it's an interesting take on it. So in this way, self-care is not really about the what, but about the why. It doesn't have to look a certain way or be narrowly defined by a list of acceptable activities. It is about claiming your space for your own humanity. So it's about putting up your hand and saying, I am not only what I am responsible for in this life, whatever that is.
Right.
I am a human being who deserves space for me to experience, to rest, for pleasure, joy, whatever. So the concept of feminism and femininity, different as they relate to self-care, but not as much as I think people understand, because they both imbue women with a certain freedom. Our gender gives us the freedom that men don't have to be soft and vulnerable, especially with each other, to explore our experience and its meaning. Femininity allows women to embrace an emotional life, whereas feminism gives them permission to claim that space, to set boundaries around it from the rest of the world to make that place possible. They are co-creators in this way of the same goal, so working in symbiosis. So that's how I feel they relate to each other. What do you think about femininity as it relates to self-care?
Well, I think, and sure, it's a little stereotypical, but to me, femininity denotes softness and kindness and grace and beauty. It's subjective, obviously, but I think about my own self-care practices, and many of them certainly align with supporting those attributes, wanting to be softer and kinder and more graceful, like the African anteater ritual. And like you've mentioned, they're absolutely influenced by societal expectations, but it doesn't make them any less beneficial or important to me. And I think it can be really difficult or ineffective to feel or to be feminine, as I've defined it, in our work environments or public lives, where we often feel this need to embrace more traditionally masculine qualities to prove our strength and capability or to see career growth. So I think, some feminist ideals are often disapproving of many of those more traditionally feminine attributes. And it can make it really hard for a lot of women, and I think myself included, to kind of reconcile this need to be both things simultaneously. So I really liked your comments about claiming your space for your own humanity, because I think I often feel like I'm walking a bit of a tightrope. Right. And I also think I've probably been pretty judgmental of how other women choose to care for themselves as well. That's not lost on me either.
Well, you think about, when you're worried about being judged, you think first about, how have I judged others?
Harshly and frequently,
right.
I suspect. So, and I guess sort of like that evolution, of our own femininity and feminism, how has self-care evolved over your lifetime? That's our next question.
In my teen years, I read YM and 17 magazine. And I also read Jane, but, not exclusively. I wasn't that cool. I was in awe of the beauty of models, maybe unfortunately. I loved fashion. I was big into fashion. When I was young, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And I was young and I was extremely impressionable. And as we've learned as a society, it is not always healthy for young girls to have rail-thin models as their role models. Heroin chic went out of style in the 90s for a reason. I used to paste pictures of the models up on my wall and dream of a day where I would look like them. And that's the truth. I wish I was cooler than that, but I wasn't. I feel like this is a good time to talk about the 1970 famous Vogue diet.
Oh, you should. You were telling me about it.
So I thought that, this toxic bullshit only happened in the 90s, but oh no, it started way back in the 1970s when Vogue published the wine and eggs diet. This was a 3-day diet where you could lose 5 pounds. I'm just going to read it out to you guys. So please don't try this at home. Breakfast was 1 hard-boiled egg, 1 glass of white wine, preferably Chablis, and a black coffee. Lunch, 2 hard-boiled eggs. Hard-boil was best, but you could poach if necessary. 2 glasses of white wine, black coffee. And for dinner, 5 ounces of steak grilled with black pepper and lemon juice. The remainder of the white wine, 1 bottle allowed per day in brackets, and black coffee.
It's somewhat balanced.
I mean, so I read an article that was written by an actual certified sommelier. Her name is Diane McMartin, who actually tried this more recently. And she said, by the end of day 3, I was exhausted, cranky, kind of shaky on my feet. I felt like I had gotten stupider. I couldn't understand simple things and definitely couldn't absorb anything new. And what she reported overall was, aside from reporting on really delicious pairings of Chablis and hard-boiled eggs, was that she felt sad all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is what happens when you starve yourself. You're sad.
I feel like I've unintentionally done this diet.
Yes, yes. I think we all have. Okay. We can be honest about that. I feel like my obsession with thinness in my teenage years, it did eventually turn on me. It escalated, unfortunately, into a full-blown eating disorder. And I remember in grade 12, I used to have to take the subway down to College Station and then the streetcar to see my therapist. And I got to show up at school late, around 11 a.m., which was awesome because I always missed math class. But unfortunately, my disordered eating had uncovered a silver lining, which was my first positive relationship with a therapist, which is a form of self-care that has taken me throughout my entire life and one that I highly recommend to anybody. I am a big proponent of therapy. The conversations I had with my therapist were illuminating. It was the beginning of a new sense of self-confidence, of just being able to talk things out. We talk about emotional vulnerability. Well, if you don't feel comfortable talking about your feelings to anybody, you can always tell them to a therapist. They're paid to keep your secrets. So moving on in my 20s, I found myself living in a small college town in the eastern townships of Quebec. And I remember I bought a secondhand bicycle. And I used to put Tori Amos in my disc bin and ride my bike as fast as I could through these amazing verdant green forests. And I would ride down to hidden spots by rushing rivers and set up a little blanket and laze about reading books and listening to music. So back in my 20s, compounding exercise with the adrenaline produced by listening to great music and mixing that with my own sort of hidden world of fantasy was the combination that produced my most precious form of self-care. And I still do that. I don't have a bicycle anymore because the roads here are terrifying, but I definitely do that while walking. And I love it. Music, walking, and drifting off into a fantasy world, perfect self-care. I guess I would say I'm lucky that I am a person that likes my own company. I know people that can't enjoy things if they do them on their own. And I really can't imagine being limited in this way. Throughout my 20s, the walking and music, that was my most common form of self-care. Me alone, walking, listening to music, thinking. That was it. That was all I could muster. When I turned 30, I was single. I was living alone in this adorable little apartment. And for my 30th birthday, I bought myself 2 memberships. So the number 1 was pole dancing. And number 2 was a membership to a hot yoga studio. So I wanted to be hot. I mean, I'll admit it. That was the motivation. People look down on vanity, but some of the best, most consequential decisions I have made in my lifetime had vanity at their core. I was not necessarily raised to be body positive, so I definitely am trying to be more body positive as I get older. Some of that cultural conditioning, does eventually become part of our DNA. So instead of trying to change it, I have looked for opportunities to kind of turn the negativity into a positive. So back to pole dancing. I had always had a great respect for strippers, but after getting to level 3 of a possible 12 of pole dancing classes, my level of respect for them had grown enormously. Pole dancing it's impossible.
Well, it looks impossible.
It's impossible. It's also referred to as vertical fitness, which is, I think, more of an apt description of what it is. Picture rock climbing with a creative flourish in 6-inch heels.
Like the core strength must just have to be.
Fuck sakes. Tip your strippers, people. That's all I'm going to say. Tip them well. Hot yoga, on the other hand, to me, was a revelation. I loved it. I loved the feeling of, honestly, panic when your heart was thumping out of your chest and sweat was pouring down your face and you were secretly praying to get done that standing series and get down to the ground. I loved working on balancing poses, tracking my progress on how long I could hold them. I especially loved the resting corpse pose at the end where they put that cold lavender towel on your forehead, which felt like a life-saving gesture.
And likely was.
And there's a feeling that you get of being kind of, we call it yoga drunk. You're all blissed out, floating out of that yoga studio to your car. I used to get home and flop in my tub like I was a pro athlete. And I had never been an athlete. So this was my, kind of first way of feeling like my body was really doing something incredible. And I was hooked. And I mean, with respect to exercise, because exercise is a big part of self-care, I think all women have a list of all of the different exercise types they have tried over their lifetime. So here's my list that I have attempted in my lifetime. Okay, so we've mentioned yoga, pole dancing. I've also trained for a half marathon, but gave up when I got runner's knee. I've done boot camp, Zumba strong, piloxing, which is a combination of Pilates and boxing, don't ask, spinning, strength training with a personal trainer, Pilates, step classes, CrossFit, street fighting. Seriously, street fighting. I used to go to this dude gym in Yarmouth. I don't know what it's called. I think it's like Joe's or Keith's or anyways.
I remember when you went there, I thought you were crazy.
Yeah. I used to go there with a group of like 10 or so women and get yelled at by a guy named Keith while flipping tractor tires and doing 50 burpees in a row. This was not my only exercise that involved being yelled at by a man. A few of them did, which is hilarious. The street fighting guy was an actual sadist. These were all self-care activities that fell into the column of being endured. Some I enjoyed, I would say, more than others, but definitely was more interested in the result of the activity, which probably, in my opinion, is a recipe for failure. Or at least not an activity you're going to be able to maintain for any length of time. I look at people in gyms like deadlifting and building this insane muscle, and I respect it, but it's definitely not my cup of tea. And I think as you get to know yourself better, you make better choices that align with what you want. So in my 40s, I don't have to chase trends anymore. I remain open, but I also know kind of what works for me, and I choose my self-care activities accordingly. So then as we're evolving through the self-care journey of Shannon, I get into my mid-30s. I got sober. So self-care became therapy, practicing rigorous honesty. I know how much fun that sounds to everyone. Accepting responsibility for my past and present actions. Letting go of past trauma, kind of starting to untangle some of the feelings of low self-esteem and build some confidence and happiness in who I was. So this is sort of what I refer to this period as the trenches of self-care. It was necessary. It was foundational. If I hadn't done it, and this is still something have not completed this project, but I've made progress in this. And if I hadn't attempted to go on that path, I would not be a happy person today. I can guarantee you. I wish every alcoholic and addict knew what was on the other side of all of that work. People would be banging down sobriety's door, honestly.
Well, speaking from experience, I think you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. So after a few years of being sober, I decided I was taking better care of myself than I ever had in my life, but I didn't look that way because I had replaced alcohol with pie. And cookies and cheesecakes, chocolate. There's a lot of sugar in wine. So when I stopped drinking wine and all other forms of alcohol, I really realized how much sugar I needed. So back then, in order to kind of get myself away from the pie table, I signed up for Noom, which is that app that kind of uses like this psychological approach, which somehow worked for me. I lost about 25 pounds. To use an overused term, I got my groove back. And once I did that, I had started to go on the path of more like the girly girl forms of self-care. So clothes, and we got that subscription box for a while, the FabFitFun, where I was getting all the products. I got really into the serums and the eye creams and the different forms of makeup.
Yes, and you got me hooked on it as well.
I did.
Which I appreciate.
It was fun for a while, but then sometimes I would buy all of the items and then forget that after a certain deadline that they would just charge your credit card, and had a couple of rounds of FabFitFun where I spent like $700.
Yeah, it's a little insidious.
Yeah, it can be. I was starting to feel that maybe I was a little bit too focused on the appearance front. Things were a little bit out of balance. And then whammo, 2022 hit. And I think every person has a year in their life that is the absolute worst year of their life. And I won't go into everything bad that happened in 2022, but a lot of bad stuff happened. And the worst of it was that my older brother died. And it was extremely unexpected, and it devastated my entire family. And he was such a beauty, my brother. He was the funniest person I have ever met in my life and probably will ever meet in my life. And I was in a fog without realizing it until actually writing for this podcast. I instantly went back to the two most effective forms of self-care that I had ever discovered. So number one was therapy. I found and started seeing a grief counselor. And number two, about a month after he passed away, I walked into Supernova, which is a yoga studio in Yarmouth, close to where we live, and I bought a 10-class card. That was 2.5 years ago. Today, I am a actual certified yoga instructor. I now teach at Supernova. I have my own fledgling yoga classes here in our community of Clare called Serenity Yoga. And I mean, for me, yoga has been a big eye-opener, and it has come back into my life at a really good time, I feel, because it's about patience. It's about letting go of ego and preconceptions of what your body can do. Your body will tell you what it can do on each day you are lucky to wake up in one. You do not get to be the author of that. Working at being present in my body has led me to have more respect for it. I notice little things. How's this muscle feeling today? Do I have energy or not? How does this pose feel? Have I made progress? So it's an awareness of self. It's not about fitting into a mold or a standard. It's about listening to what myself is feeling, being prepared to hear it. I finally understood that there are two people present in the relationship you have with yourself. So you have the person that you are and your awareness of this person. And so it's the awareness or the consciousness that is the caregiver in self-care. So my ability to connect with this awareness, to know that I am the person caregiving this human that is in my charge, that is very different than having a conception of self be the force of my own will, where I have finally kind of started to develop a healthy relationship with myself and practice self-care that is nourishing. And we talk about the difference between self-care that is instant gratification,
right.
self-care that doesn't feel right, So as we get older and we develop that relationship we have with ourselves, then our self-care, the quality of it improves necessarily as we do things that are more nourishing and have a more of a long-term success.
Yeah.
So does it have to be good for you? Does it have to lead to growth in some way to be successful? Fuck no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I mean, the older I get, the more that feeling good is associated with growth and expansiveness rather than the instant gratification. So you know how you're going to feel if you rot in your bed all day, binge watching reality TV and eating sugar.
Sometimes really good.
Sometimes great. Some days you're so exhausted and burned out, you don't fucking care. And you need to turn everything off, and that's okay. But more and more, I feel better if I also take a walk or call my mother.
It's very adult of you.
Well, thank you. I have evolved, Anna. Let's talk about how you have evolved.
Well, that's still happening. How is it evolved? I don't know. I mean, as a younger person, I think activities I could throw myself into to use as an escape were always a treat. And I mean, still are. But writing and reading topped the list, along with listening to music. I feel like, these weren't just things I enjoyed as hobbies, but they actually kind of fed my soul. Like there was something about finding a new favorite song that I could listen to on repeat and dissect everything about it. When you used to get a CD in like Columbia House, and it was the only way you had of knowing what the right lyrics were to a song. So you would just pour through it for hours and hours and listen to it over and over again, as an album, not as this sort of instant gratification of the one song on that album that you like, but in its entirety, put together the way the artist, wanted you to feel it. Anyway.
The poetry of it.
The poetry of it. Yeah. I was a huge Tragically Hip fan. And I think of our generation, Gord Downie was one of the best poets out there.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Bar none.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was either that or it was finding a new style or self-expression as I tried on different personas, so to speak, seeing what felt right. I can say for certain that the time my girlfriends and I decided to try a new trend of wearing our jeans inside out in 7th grade did not feel right. And it did also not start the craze we imagined it would. It took a while to live that one down. So, coming of age is a pretty interesting, complicated, and
trial and error.
Magical time even, right? Trial and error, absolutely. And it's hard to decipher, honestly, what self-care maybe would have looked like then. And I don't think it was something that I was probably conscious of in any way. But in hindsight, when I look back at how I coped with things or how I worked through things in my head, it was always writing that gave me the biggest sense of relief. Yeah. Satisfaction, enjoyment. It was something I did, I think, as soon as I learned how to write. I was writing stories and I was escaping into that. And it was, it just felt good. Yeah. And I mean, I can even go back probably a little bit further than that to really clear memories from a summer. I think maybe I was 5 or 6. And as you know, I grew up in the woods in the year 1886.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I picture.
I know. We did used to play this game
There's
called...
horse-drawn carriages going by.
Oh, no, I'm not kidding. We played a game called Pioneer Day where we would turn the lights out and we would wear old-timey clothes. I didn't grow up in a cult. I just
God bless your hippie parents.
I know, right? So anyway, grew up in the woods, no neighbors. It's this quiet, reflective spot, just as it was. And I kind of loved strolling aimlessly around my parents' property, even as a little kid, and especially in the morning, singing weird little songs that I made up in my head and picking flowers and eating wild strawberries. Almost like this sort of unintentional preschool wellness program, I think. And I suspect that even though it wasn't an active attempt at wellness, it actually was. It was my happy place and maybe what self-care looks like before somebody tells you what it is.
Right.
Yeah. And I still remember the sweet little blue flower dress I wore.
Aww.
Yeah. It was great.
Baby Anna.
Baby Anna. I do know for certain, though, as I got older, part of self-care was centered around fitting in. especially after the inside out pants scenario.
I mean,
It was
hobo
hard
chic.
It was hard to come back from. But yeah, I mean, it was as much that as it was figuring out who I was at my core without all of that external influence. And I remember, when all my friends started shaving their legs and doing their hair, and I was trying to figure out what that was all about. And I, like you, started reading 17 magazine and YM, trying to understand what I was supposed to be doing, namely buying products and weighing 90 pounds, as we've determined.
Yep.
I also had posters of my celebrity crushes, torn neatly from Tiger Beat. But I also had those Guess ads with Drew Barrymore and Anna Nicole Smith, rest in peace.
R.I.P.
Oh, no. And I remember the summer, I think I was 13 or 14, where I carefully built a tan despite my mother's disapproval and started dressing a little bit more provocatively.
Oh, yes.
And it all happened so fast. And I remember my first innocent kiss, tiny little peck. I was 13 years old. It happened at Fort Anne. And it's like my whole world changed in an instant. I had this epiphany that I was no longer this little girl. And I actually remember the drive home with my dad vividly. And I just remember this guilt and this shame of I'm not a little girl anymore. It was,
wow.
Yeah, it was, I remember it pretty clearly. And from that moment on, pretty much did everything in my power to grow up as quickly as I could.
Right.
And I mean, that's so sad to me now. I really wish I could have let myself be a kid a little bit longer.
Right.
But I mean, that was some time ago. And if I start thinking about self-care in my 40s, maybe it actually looks a lot like it did from the summer I was 5. Mm-hmm. A lot of strolling aimlessly.
Full circle.
Through my yard. Yeah, exactly. Watching my flowers grow, thinking about the next landscaping project I'll probably never start or complete. And also eating berries and chives and talking to myself. But more so, and I think this is along the same sort of train of thought that you were on. It feels like I'm fixing myself up, like this old house that still has these good old bones, but it needs some TLC. All of those bad habits and coping mechanisms of my youth coming up for inspection and a redirect. I mean, if you had asked me what self-care looked like in my 30s, I would have responded with, an hour to myself without the demands of work and a bottle of chilled Sauvignon Blanc or a double or triple gin martini. Probably a free pour triple.
I mean, that's a classic form of self-care.
Classic Anna. Yeah, and I mean, speaking of that, self-care in my 40s also looks a lot like taking responsibility for my past choices. So a lot of accepting, difficult truths about my own behaviors and motivations over the years and letting go some of that resentment and blame and reframing some of that victim mentality that we all carry. So it's about being more honest with myself and really just about wanting to feel good about the way I live my life. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean I don't forget to take care of myself or that I don't act like a dick. Doesn't mean any of those things.
It's about balance,
It's
Anna.
about balance. I can still be a dick.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've even sabotaged my own efforts to be well. I find it hard to rein myself in long enough to slow down. So that's another thing that I'm working on. And I think mostly because my life holds such contrast as it relates to the demands and balances of home and work. I currently work seasonally, so from late February to early November, and it's generally at a frantic pace, though in fairness, it really doesn't always need to be. And I've had a similar dynamic in my working life as far back as I can recall. I take care of myself less, and I find self-care to be more reactionary than proactive during that time. And I recognize when I need to slow down, and I'm getting a bit better at reining that in before I burn out, but it's still a tough one for me. I think, though, until I get a good grasp on managing some of my tendencies towards pleasing people and fear of failure, it's probably going to continue that way. So, as much as it is looking at my life honestly in my 40s, there's still a lot I'd like to improve. And I think I look at that in a sense without as much self-deprecation now. Mm-hmm. It's less about, how can you have all of these faults? It's more about, you have them.
Yeah.
And you're going to work through them and do the best you can. So it's that compassion piece again.
Yeah, forgiveness of self, giving yourself a break, that you don't have to have it all figured out. I think we spend so much of our lives forcing ourselves into this idea that we're supposed to have things figured out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Well, I certainly don't.
Me neither.
But yeah, so I spend half the season sort of running around like a chicken with my head cut off, working like a madman, a bit of a workaholic. And part of me really enjoys that, but I do pay a price for that. So as summer turns to fall, I kind of come to a literal full stop. And for nearly 4 months, I dive almost single-mindedly into leisure and self-care. I know, it sounds really great. And
it does.
And in many ways, it is. And I can admittedly take it too far, though, and sometimes at the expense of other important things. I mean, it's nothing for me to spend 4 or 5 hours, stretching out meditation and exercise each day. And I become really, really protective over that time, to the point where I can get fairly resentful when the real world needs my attention. Excuse me?
Actually, this 5 months is to me.
Exactly. I mean, our annual vacation south for me is the summer that I never get to enjoy at home, because I have worked in the summer tourism in Nova Scotia tourist towns my entire life. So
Right.
it's the reward and, in my mind, the great equalizer to make that pace in the summer acceptable.
Right.
I mean, for the time being, anyway. So yeah, productivity, self-care, they live at either end of the spectrum. And I'm really trying to find better ways to incorporate sort of that strong work ethic of my summer self with that dickish, staunch rebellion against structure of my winter self. And, even things out a little bit. I tend to gravitate towards all or nothing scenarios. And that really flies in the face of balance a lot of the time.
Yeah, we have that in common. Go big or go home.
Go big or go home. And while I was writing this and, sort of talking about productivity and self-care and how I balance my time and sort of that dichotomy between summer and winter, and I started thinking a lot about job fulfillment and wellness, especially as self-care is often the offset to that burnout and overwhelm that work can bring us. And I've always tended to believe that a good job or career should at least be somewhat enjoyable, if not rewarding, in ways beyond monetary gain.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that says a lot about our quality of life here and the luxury of choice that comes from being born where and when we did. I mean, 150 years ago, whether or not our work life was fulfilling was of zero consequence.
That's right.
Yeah. And maybe it's a crazy ideal too, thinking that paid work should and could fund both the quality of life that I want to enjoy and fulfill me in a meaningful way. I mean, maybe it would serve me better to look at those two things as totally separate entities, which I don't think until recently I really did. What if I didn't need to feel shitty about how I'm not passionate enough about what I do for a living?
Right.
Maybe if I relinquished that expectation, it would allow me the freedom to set better boundaries and equally prioritize myself and not burn out every year for the last 2 decades. I don't know. Maybe I don't need to be fulfilled by my job. And I mean, that doesn't mean that I don't care about doing good work, because I absolutely do. That means a lot to me. But maybe it doesn't need to get as much from me as I've had the tendency to give it over the years. And, lower my expectations about what it should give me beyond a paycheck.
I think that it's sold to us from a young age that you have that adage, like, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly searching for that thing, right? And if you're like me, I mean, I've had every different type of job you can imagine, like looking for that thing, like, where am I going to fit? Well, what happens is, like, I've done so many different types of jobs. I haven't built any type of career trajectory in any of them.
You just have a lot of transferable skills.
Oh, sure. That's what people with bachelors of English literature are told.
Wait till you have a very specific college degree and then come back to me. But I do think I've only recently come to think of growth or self-care as an evolution, something without an end, only the process of getting there.
Right.
So much of my time has been spent on managing myself, my entire life, managing myself, my appearance, my reputation, my career, and the parts of me that face the world that I forget to kind of serve my own deeper needs. It's like, I always thought there was a finish line,
Right.
like
Yeah.
I would reach it and proclaim happiness and stability and
Right.
self-acceptance. I'm there. I've done it. Like some amount of money or status or acceptance, achievement was going to erase all of those years of self-doubt and nervousness and loneliness and otherness that I really always considered a defect. And I think maybe a lot of us feel that way, like we're siloed or unique or special,
Yep.
And while in some ways that may be true, I'm starting to think that maybe this can work against us. And maybe it's worked against me. Maybe it's prevented me from finding more meaningful support in others. So, yeah, yet another fun little trip in my 40s.
Well, like I feel what you're saying on such a deep level. And I think probably a lot of people listening can too. You're looking for that finish line when you have achieved it all and you can finally relax. In times of stress for me, I definitely, of course, forget to practice self-care. I often neglect even the basics like sleep or food. And one thing that has always been true of my MO is that when I get very stressed, which is 99% of the time always related to work, I go into this fight or flight mode like a feral fucking animal that's been trapped in a cage. And I am completely consumed with doing everything in my power to get out of that cage. That's the finish line you're talking about. You're like, oh, if I could just get through this, I'll neglect everything in the service of my goal to get out. And it's occurred to me after 20 years of working that the stress never ends.
No.
It just morphs into different things. It ebbs, it flows, it changes jobs, it changes,
it follows you, you follow it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the strategy of mine that I've realized is bad. It's bad. It's the true end to stress, the way that you're defining it, is either death or retirement. And neither one of them we should be really racing towards. We're hurrying through our lives.
Like we have been since we were 13.
Correct. So, most of my adult life working, I have relied on being in good standing with my employer to feel at ease, and so when that was out of whack, so was I. And most of that stress I take on is in the spirit of, to be very honest, approval seeking, to the benefit of putting my own mind at ease.
Yeah.
So that's why I go over and above. That's the point of perfectionism, right? It's an insurance policy. So when I hear the word self-care, that's my reminder. Actually, I matter too. Nobody's asking me to go over and above. And
they're probably not even noticing.
No.
That's the
saddest part.
The kicker.
Yeah.
They think you're doing just fine.
Yeah. It's just a job. You can put it down.
It's just you and your imposter syndrome.
Oh, man.
Having a rough go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that you don't need to carry the responsibility all the time. That our experience in life is actually for us, which again seems obvious, but it's not.
No.
So, with that in mind, let's talk about experiencing life to the fullest, your best day of self-care.
Perfect day?
The perfect day.
All right. Shannon, you should go first.
You want me to go first?
I want you to go first.
All right.
Mostly because my perfect day changed 6 times.
Were you being a perfectionist about your perfect day?
I might have been.
All right. This is fun.
Okay.
So my perfect day. I wake up on my own power. It's probably still early, but not the punishing 5 a.m. alarm of my weekdays. It's probably the first day of like a 3-day weekend. So I've got like lots of free time stretched in front of me. I call my 3 pets to jump in bed with us. So my brother cats, Rod and Todd, and my dog, Lexi. Lexi's like rolling on her back, looking for a belly rub. Rod and Todd are jumping over our legs, hunting for invisible blanket predators. I go downstairs, I make coffee, and like good fucking coffee. We got like a DeLonghi, one of those real special coffee makers. I thought my husband was insane for buying one of those, and it's the best thing we've ever purchased in our marriage.
The coffee is very good.
It's better than the purchase of our house, honestly. So I sit, I journal, I make a girl breakfast, like avocado toast with feta and some fruit. Real basic white girl shit. I set up in my lazy boy in front of the fire, multiple blankets, my magic bag, naturally. I sit eating said avocado toast, scrolling TikTok and the news, because I love to start the day with some real chaotic news binging.
Ken, you're insane.
That's not everyone's form of relaxation, but it's definitely fucking mine. So after about an hour of this, I walk Lexi, either the beach or the woods, depending on the wind and the tides. I put in my earphones. I escape in my mind the music, go into my fantasy world. And then after the walk, I have a long shower. I get dressed in something fun. I jump in my car and I head to Winners. This is not an advertisement for Winners, but it could be. Winners, we got to talk. I go to Winners, I grab a cart, and I go through all the aisles, choosing 50 items. I do typically 2 rounds of clothes trying on sessions because you can only bring 10 items in at a time.
Now, do you, in your go around in Winners, do you do the shoes first or last?
Last.
Me too. Okay.
Always last.
I don't know why I needed to know that. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. No, it's just very important.
It's your perfect day. It sure is.
Yeah. So after the choosing, I usually choose 4 or 5 items, particularly if they're clearance rack items. And then I happily trot off to the skincare / pajama / shoe aisles. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then head to the checkout. And then I go to Kohl's. I read the jackets of 10 books and buy one. Yeah. If it bores me before the end of the book jacket read, then I put it down and I move on to the next one. I go home, I try on all my new clothes. I mix the new clothes that I bought with clothes I already have and make outfit configurations. And then when I get bored of that, I come downstairs, I flop on the couch with multiple blankets with the pets, and I turn on the TV to see if there's anything worthy of binge watching, which there always is. Then I'll put something on and completely ignore it and fall asleep and have a nap. Because I don't know about you, but I love the feeling of dozing in and out of sleep while you can hear the sounds of the TV in the distance of your mind.
Do you know what my favorite background noise to nap to is on the TV?
True crime.
No. Baseball and golf.
Really?
Yes. And I don't watch either sport, but baseball and golf.
I should try that.
Perfect napping.
Huh. Napping TV.
Mm-hmm. There's something about the sound of the ball hitting the bat. It's
yeah, that would be relaxing. I don't know why I choose the murder shows.
Well, I generally do,
but it's just so fucking relaxing. Whatever it is, the couch nap in the afternoon cannot be compared to anything else. And then after napping for a while, I might hear my husband returning for whatever adventures he's been up to. And then we have our little evening chats, talk about dinner, prepare something together. Usually one of us taking the lead, the other one keeping them company at the kitchen island, talking about shit. Yeah. And then we watch the pets run around, furry fish in the fishbowl of our living room, eating dinner, immediately back to the couch. Sometimes we put on Rod and Todd's favorite YouTube program, which is the mouse program, where it's just like mouse running around a block of wood.
I can't believe they haven't destroyed your television.
Oh my God, it's so crazy. We have the TV mounted basically to the ceiling. I swear one day Rod's going to get there and he's going to pull that thing down. And then we go to bed early because I'm old.
Well, and you have to get up at 5 a.m.
That's right.
Let's not forget that.
That's my perfect day.
That's your perfect day?
Mm-hmm.
That's lovely. And there were several components of it that I am now wishing were in my perfect day. So it did change 50 times since I wrote this, But we're going to start with this version. Maybe I'll tell you what I'd change as I go along. We'll see.
Okay.
All right. So as a rule, just so you know, I usually sleep very well. I'm a good sleeper. My mom used to say I could sleep anywhere. Pile of rocks, I could fall asleep.
Good
No
skill.
problem falling asleep. And I generally have a nice long sleep, 6, 7, 8 hours, 9 hours if I'm really lucky. Anyway, the problem I have in my real life is the waking up part. And basically what happens is my eyes open and then my brain runs a gauntlet each and every morning as soon as I come to. I'm analyzing, prioritizing, and needlessly worrying about how the day will unfold, playing out several scenarios simultaneously as I go through my morning routines about what could possibly go wrong in that day. And if I have extra time to consider everything that may go wrong, it's even worse. And I hate nothing more than looking forward to the day. I just need to get up, get it started. So, again, we're talking about my perfect day. So it's the opposite of that. It's like Seinfeld. It's opposite George.
Opposite George.
Opposite George. So this frenetic energy I'm talking about, the second my eyes open, I actually had a catchy handle when I was a kid. They called me faster than normal matter. And that's still to this day how my brain feels most of the time. So that's how a normal day is. My perfect day, though, perfect day begins much like the vacation day in which I wrote the answer to this question. Awaking without the aid of an obnoxious alarm after my body has enjoyed its preferred 9 hours of sleep. Birdsong, nice, not necessary, but nice. I do like the birdsong. Yeah. The defining characteristic of this perfect morning, though, is that my brain is quiet. Quiet.
No scenarios?
No scenarios. Zero scenarios. I can take everything in slowly. There's no immediate requirements of me other than methodically making coffee with a little classical music in the background.
Ooh, classical.
I do like my classical, as you know, with the dancing and the
right.
Yeah. So the perfect day includes, it's going to sound awful, but anyway, it includes absolutely no influence from the outside world whatsoever.
Yes.
No emails, no calls, no texts, no news, no responsibilities. Maybe some lighthearted chat with family or friends, but certainly nothing that looks like an obligation in any possible way. So I then would stretch out my old body for about half an hour while taking in the view from my living room, overlooking St. Mary's Bay and the islands in the distance across the water, light dancing off those reddish cliffs in the distance and fog banks moving slowly by. And after a few cups or maybe a whole pot of coffee, maybe not as nice as your coffee, but coffee nonetheless, I might sit and write for an hour, maybe two. I don't know. Then, because I generally don't eat early in the day, a mid-morning snack comprised ideally of pastry and fruit.
Ooh, pastry.
Yeah. A chocolate croissant, maybe? I don't know. That followed by a leisurely walk or a workout, culminating with a meditation that feels as restorative and effortless as I always hope it is and rarely is. Because gone for me are the days of HIIT workouts or anything terribly demanding or punishing, much like your list of exercise that Jesus. I've never tried.
Don't do CrossFit.
I will not do CrossFit. I mean, if I'm going to expend that kind of energy, it needs to be on something I really like doing. Like playing, rambunctiously with my nieces and nephews, or maybe a game of badminton that I win, but only by a slight margin. It's got to be some competitiveness.
Because you don't want to make people feel bad.
Well, no. So this is all followed by a languorous afternoon, including a nap. As we've discussed, naps are key.
Naps are key.
Maybe some light reading and thought given to what delicious dinner may be in our future. So afternoon turns to evening. We make some incredible dish. My role preferably being a supporting role of cleaning and prep cooking. Nothing that requires timing. Not so much. Maybe some music in the background. Something new, that I'm excited to enjoy or share with somebody for the first time. I'm always surprised and amazed by how much good music is out there,
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, usually I only come across it like a decade after it's been released, but I eventually come across it. Just share it with somebody. They're like, that was 20 years ago. Oh. So then I would take time setting the table. Maybe I'd pick some flowers. Close friends or family would arrive by about 6 o'clock to dine with us, and we'd play a friendly game of trivia maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah, after supper. And then the day ends after everybody goes, curled up on the couch, watching a Dateline episode.
Yes.
So back to the true crime.
Naturally.
Before we make it to bed, also not too late, we must avoid falling asleep on the couch, the dreaded couch falling asleep. That just ruins a good night's sleep for everybody.
It's true. It's the worst.
Well, actually, you know what? That's pretty good. I might not change anything there. That's it. That's the perfect day.
It's perfect. I mean, there is a lot of things I want to steal about your perfect day.
Well, we could meld the two.
We could meld the two.
I mean, virtually those are vacation days.
The Dateline episode at the end, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a real.
You do need to try napping to baseball, though.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Well, Shannon, that's the end of our questions.
Well, self-care has been a journey.
It has.
Yeah. a deep journey, but also a lighthearted journey, you know?
One that never ends.
Thank God.
Well, thanks for listening.
And thanks for joining us again on The Assignment.
See you soon.